now both of my kids, 16-year-old son and 9-year-old daughter, and my ex are extremely mad at me because I won't give up my appointed time with them. My son won't even talk to me and my daughter is crying all the time. Me and my ex divorced shortly after my daughter was born. I blame him for it and he blames me. I won't go into detail here. We ended up with a 50/50 custody agreement, switching every other week. While this was 8 years ago, we're still not on good terms. We rarely ever talk to each other outside of the kids, and I'm perfectly fine with that. One thing we have agreed on since the beginning though is that we don't plan things on days that aren't ours. And unless it's extremely important, we don't switch days or weeks. In the 8 years since we've been divorced, I have never asked him to have the kids on a day that isn't mine, and I've never given him one of my days even if he begged. Well, last week my ex contacted me and told me the good news. His parents are hosting a week-long family reunion in the summer at Disneyland and he wants to take the kids. Well, the problem is that it's on one of my weeks. He asked me to let the kids stay with him that week or to switch a week with me, and I shot him down. It's my week with them and I get to spend it with them. I told him if it's so important to him to reschedule, but he claims his parents can't do that and this is the only week that the whole family can go, and he told me that I need to think of them. I told him tough luck and hung up on him. Well, this last Sunday when my ex dropped the kids off with me, my son refused to talk to me at all and my daughter wouldn't even look at me. When I asked my ex what was wrong, he refused to talk to me, only saying ask them in a snarky tone before leaving. When I asked my daughter what was wrong, she burst into tears and said that I was not letting daddy take them to Disneyland. Asking my son, who still refuses to talk to me. It turns out that my ex told them I was not letting them go to Disneyland with him. He's trying to paint me as the bad guy. I sat both of them down last night to talk to them and explain it's my week with them, but they refuse to listen to me. My daughter just cried and my son told me I'm only doing this to get back at my ex. I think it's unfair for him to do this when his parents scheduled it during my time with them. I demanded an apology from my ex and him to set things straight, but he refuses, and his last text to me being, "Can't tell them the truth 'cause they already know it." I'm so pissed right now. I am a 36 years old female, and I have always been into jewelry. I used to own a variety of jewelry sets, but due to unfortunate circumstances, most of them had to go so I could afford rent after I lost my job. My husband never got lucky to land a job since 2013. Thankfully now I have a stable job that gets us by from month to month. I also kept one set of jewelry which is the most valuable, whether momentarily and / or sentimentally, since it's part of family heirloom. The set includes a pair of earrings, a bracelet and a necklace. All gold material, and again they are worth decent amount of money. My brother-in-law has been with then-girlfriend for 10 years and they recently got married. It was a huge deal for the family. My husband wanted to get them a decent wedding gift and tried borrowing money from friends and neighbors but got turned down. He kept stressing out about it for weeks, and just the other day, the wedding was days prior and the groom and bride are off to their honeymoon, I discovered that my jewelry set was gone. I freaked after my husband nonchalantly said he gifted it to his brother's wife as a wedding gift. I was fuming. I asked how could he, and he replied that he had no money and nothing of value to give the newlyweds, and besides that set has been sitting in the closet since July 2019 and I never wore any piece of it, so he figured I'd forgotten about it, but he said he'll figure a way to pay me or get me a similar one once he starts working, but I very loudly told him absolutely not and gave him 3 days. Just 3 days to return the set or I'll stop paying for everything in the apartment. He looked puzzled, like he couldn't believe I was serious. He said he doesn't want to cause an issue, but I said it's already there, and if he doesn't want issues all he has to do is contact his brother or his wife and retrieve the set or go get it himself. He tried to twist the argument and offer the same solutions as mentioned above, but I refused. I said I just want my set back and he has 3 days only. He kept talking about how tasteless and disrespectful it'd be for him to retrieve a wedding gift, and said this will damage his relationship with his brother and family, and also how impossible it was to retrieve the set in 3 days, when the couple are on their honeymoon in another country. He said I was financially abusing him by threatening to stop paying for anything knowing I'm the breadwinner. Also, he refused to give me their new contact info to retrieve the set myself. So I recently got together with a guy from my hobby. He asked me out first and I had some doubts that we'd work together as a couple because of the age difference. He's 35 and I'm 22. So, in my apartment, since it's an old house that was originally a single-family house, there isn't much soundproofing. And the floors creak when people move. I've gotten used to the sound of the guy upstairs getting up at 4 a.m. since he starts work at 5. And the sound of the girls in the apartments to either side of mine watching telenovelas till midnight, taking work calls all day and having friends over on weekend nights. I know when I play music or have friends over, some of the sound leaks through the walls. So I'd never get upset about hearing my neighbors because it goes both ways. So, when my boyfriend started coming over more often, he had complaints about the neighbors, which put me in an awkward place. He wanted to go speak to them or have me text them and I said no. For example, one of the early times he stayed over we went to bed around 10. He wanted me to ask my neighbor to turn down her TV. I said she didn't have it that loud and she turns it off at midnight anyway. At 4 a.m., he got very irritated with my upstairs neighbor getting up and cooking breakfast. I said that he would be done by 5 because that's when his shift starts. At 7 a.m., he was still trying to sleep in and the neighbor on the other side had some work calls that he said he couldn't sleep through. I offered him earplugs and he said he couldn't sleep with them in either. He wanted me to ask her to quiet down. He had similar comments every time he heard someone else in the building just living their life, especially if it was when he was in bed. I got frustrated with my boyfriend and told him, you can't expect to date a hot young 22-year-old and not want to deal with a 22-year-old's living situation. I don't know if you realize, but this is a normal apartment for someone my age. Hell, my neighbors are pretty great. Nobody's throwing loud parties on work nights. Nobody's having screaming fights. Nobody's having babies. The hot young part was in sarcastic air quotes because those were his words, not mine. He got irritated and asked why I was bringing age into it. And I said it's because he can't both want someone so young and also want someone with house kinda money. And he was being so out of touch with how normal people in their 20s live. He got really irritated with me bringing age into it. And even more annoyed when I'd respond to his neighbor complaints in the future with, "Okay, boomer." Or tell him that if he wanted me to have a rich person apartment, he could pay for it. It's not possible for me to get to his house on my own because I don't have a car and the buses don't go that far into the suburbs. So that would mean him driving 30 minutes from his house in the suburbs to pick me up, then an extra 30 to drive me to his house. Then an hour round trip early in the morning to get me home in time for work. It's a lot easier for him to visit me in the city. I am using boomer as a joke or a figure of speech to say acting out of touch and entitled to tell other people what to do. It is a common figure of speech to say, "Okay, boomer," to someone who is acting entitled regardless of their actual age. It's more of a mindset thing. I googled his property records for his house and he owns it with a woman who shares his last name. Holy shit. I don't know if she's his wife or ex-wife or what, but I'm out of here. I'm honestly freaking out right now, but I just gotta say, great big thank you to everyone who noticed red flags and made me question that. I've blocked his number. He can have fun figuring out where I went. My husband Nick was married to his first wife Vanessa for 5 years and they had 2 amazing kids, Luke and Lila. Sadly, Vanessa died in an accident 11 years ago when the kids were very young. I started dating Nick 8 years ago and we started off very slowly for obvious reasons. Nick has always been a little more distant than anyone I'd ever been with. But he and the kids lost Vanessa so young that I understood it. After 3 years of dating, Nick asked me to marry him and I moved in. I've always had a really great relationship with Luke and Lila and they were happy for me to marry their dad. I had wanted an actual wedding, nothing big. But Nick really didn't want one, so we got married at the courthouse with just Luke and Lila present. We had a really fast engagement, but it worked for all of us. I have loved being Luke and Lila's stepmom and officially adopted them after I found out I was pregnant with our son, Casey. The kids have been so great with Casey and help out so much. Nick was wonderful during the pregnancy and had always been a really loving dad and husband. But Nick has been pulling away a lot the last few months. He's been even more distant than usual and working late nights and going away with friends almost every weekend. I've tried talking to him, but he's been impatient with both me and the kids. I found out I was pregnant in June and am now 21 weeks pregnant with a girl. The kids are excited to have a little sister, but Nick just seems so indifferent to everything and everyone. He's been missing soccer games, Lila's birthday, doctor's appointments, etc. Casey is too young to notice, but Luke and Lila are so hurt by their dad's absence. These kids are so good and they lost their mom so young, and I'm infuriated that Nick is ignoring the kids like this. Last week, I finally sat Nick down and told him that he needs to stop disappearing and be more present in our lives. We're going to have another child soon, and before we know it, Luke and Lila will be grown up and going to college. After an hour of arguing, he screamed at me that he wished Vanessa was still alive and that I had switched places with her and died instead. He also threw in some awful comments that I need to stop pretending I'm Luke and Lila's real mom and that I'm only half the mom Vanessa was. The final straw was him saying that he never even wanted any kids with me, but did it so I'd keep busy and leave him alone. I'm so beyond hurt right now. I know I'm just his second choice, but I've always tried to honor Vanessa and tell Luke and Lila how lucky they were to have her as their mom. I love all of our kids more than anything, and I'm just so heartbroken. Nick barely pays attention to Casey now and doesn't even acknowledge the pregnancy. He somewhat apologized this weekend and took all 3 kids to lunch, but he won't even look me in the eye. He seems like he wants to talk, but he doesn't say anything, and I'm too upset to even be near him. I'm not sure where to go from here. Honestly, I can't even be around Nick right now, and if there weren't any kids involved, I'd leave and never look back. I'm not sure if he's cheating or the thought of a 4th child is stressing him out. But I'm devastated and not sure how or why I should save this marriage, besides doing it for the kids.